Oftentimes we have untapped potential that we ain't even scratching the surface on. On today's episode, we're going to talk to you about what you can do specifically, or how you can go about making this happen so that you can reach your full earning potential. Oh my goodness, this is going to be straight fire. Hey, everyone. Welcome to another great episode of the Sales Evangelist podcast. I'm your host, Donald C. Kelly, the Sales Evangelist, and I'm so excited for another great episode. I'm so excited to be here with you today. My guest is Ashley Winston. She's an author and entrepreneur and helps individuals like you and I tap into our full potential. And on this episode, it's going to be fire. Ashley's going to come in and bring some great insights with us that can help you and help all of us to make sure we're tapping into our full earning potential. Going into 2023, there's so many opportunities out there. Now, you might think that the economy is bad, and we talk about that, but there are opportunities if you believe that and if you go out and you can hunt it. Listen to this episode. Check out some of the cool things that Ashley has to offer. And we have her on some of our other podcasts, so I want you to check them out in the show notes and get a chance to meet her. You're going to love this. Ashley, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Donald.
I'm so looking forward to this. I think there's so many this time of the year, especially as we start off a new year. So often we hear people make goals around money, or they make commitments or resolutions. However, I think there's one piece lacking oftentimes is just like understanding their potential of what they're capable of doing. So I really want to get into that with you, and we'll talk about that for a little bit here. But talk to me a little bit more about what you do. I bragged about you a little bit in a teaser here, but I only could do so much. Tell us a little bit more about what you do, Ashley.
Well, I'm a multi-passionate entrepreneur, so I traffic between multiple industries, helping people unlock what I call their God-given potential and unleash their unstoppable. And so depending on the industry, that might look a little different, but it all boils down to I help to build teams so that they can have better outcomes in their lives and actually bridge the gap between where they are now and what they are saying they want, whether that's a financial, outcome or really just any type of life goal. I bridge the gap.
I love it. And you got me at hello on this one. Like, this topic is just like, as a podcast host, I can be selfish, where I bring on guests that I want to hear from.
Right. It's your prerogative. You can do what you want to do.
Right. It just so happens, it benefits our community as well. But I want to go straight into that. And I love the fact that you framed it like, it can help our team, and it can help help bridge that gap. But going specifically around the financial potential, let's go back even to a sub level, just potential in general. Why do so many people not live up to the potential that they have, or don't even tap into their full potential? Like, I've seen this throughout my life, and it's just one of those things that go bonkers. And I would love to hear your thoughts on it.
I really think, Donald, that it boils down to fear. I think that's the root of a lot of what keeps people boxed into living beneath their potential, and lack of exposure too. It's kind of a combination, because I think some people would, explore and venture out to unlock their full potential if they were exposed to what's available to them, if they knew what was inside of them. And that boils down to environment, atmosphere. Right? Like, if you're never in a certain atmosphere, or the type of atmosphere where your potential can be seen or unlocked, or somebody can see something in you, that's never going to be realized. You don't even know it's there. It's hidden, right? A lot of times our potential is dormant. I think that's so exposure. And then fear, like if you do know that there's something in you, but you're afraid to try, you're afraid to step out. And I think it's because we love what's familiar. And our future, in my opinion, our future is never found in what's familiar, but it's comforting. And so it's like, you can have your comfort zone, or you can choose courage and unlock your full potential. It takes courage.
And I love those too. And I was sitting here amening some of those things in my head, like, dang it, Ashley's like looking into my life and telling me stuff already.
I hear that a lot.
Because it is very common, right? Like, I think I want to go back to the idea of fear. And then we can come back into the money one.
Okay.
I can tell you, I had, when you hear people say, I've heard people say it, and it's like the fear of success. I'm like, blah, blah, blah. Who's going to talk about no fear of, like, everybody wants to be successful. Nobody's going to really have a fear of success. But then I can tell you when I first started a business, actually, I was definitely fear of success because one, I didn't want to seem as a charlatan or like as a imposter. So the imposter syndrome, a lot of people face that. But then number two
Yes.
towards that was like, I was a solo coach, and I was like, I don't want to have more clients or bigger clients because I'm not going to be able to take care of them. You know what I mean? Like,
Yes.
so
Yeah.
that fear of success was like, there's no way I'm going to mess up. I don't want to do that. So let's stay back here in comfortable zone.
Yeah, comfort zone, exactly. I was just talking about that, I guess a night or so ago with a girl that I mentor, and she's
Uh-huh.
pursuing real estate and kind of doing a career swap. And every time we're talking about how every time she gets to a certain point, she sabotages, right? And we were looking at the
Self-sabotage, right?
pattern. Yeah, self-sabotage. And self-sabotage can be tricky because at first it didn't look like that. It could just like, oh, it's this or it's that, because it can mask itself so many different ways. But then we started to look at the pattern of how many different areas of her life this was happening in, where like, house almost sells, then it doesn't sell. You order something and then it doesn't come in the mail, right? It's like all these different things that seem random, like they're out of your control, but you realize, oh my goodness, this is happening because this is what's happening inside of me, right? I've got this chain, and I'm believing I can only go so far. And when I get to that place, that chain, that belief system that I have is designed to bring me back. So you can't go
Mm-hmm.
any further than what you believe, because we become what we believe. So your subconscious mind is going to bring you back into whatever your belief system is. That's why
Come
transforming our
on.
thinking is so important. And so when we keep reaching the same limitations or hitting up, coming up against those, even in your earning potential, if we shift to that,
Yeah.
when you keep hitting a certain amount, you're like, man, I can't break this level or this amount in my business, this goal that I have. The chain is, the barriers inside of you. It's not outside. It's not the clients. It's your belief system that you believe you can only get to 100K. You can only get to 1 million. You can only get to, it's what you believe. Because when
Yeah.
you believe, whatever you believe, you start to act upon. You start to create what's necessary for that belief to manifest.
Yeah.
So if you're on 100K, you're going to do whatever you can to hit 100K. If the goal is 5K, you're going to keep doing whatever you do to hit 5K. And you're never going to go up from there until you change what you believe.
All right. You got, this is, I think we can end the episode here, and that will be like they got the cost for admission already.
Oh
They
my
got that. Like
goodness.
we gave them some good stuff on that.
You asked
I
me a
want
good
to go
question.
deeper.
Okay.
I need to be as a guest. I mean, as a host, I need to be able to do some probing here, be antagonistic in some way. And I want to go into that idea because I agree with you 100% on this notion of the belief system, because it's so true. Because if I'm only if I'm 100K level, have you read Atomic Habits yet?
Actually, I have. Not all the way through, but I have.
Okay.
It's a book I have that I go into.
I have it on my list too. Like, and I'm going through it right now, and I'm just like,
It's a
it's
good
so good.
book.
But one of the yeah, James, one of the things that James Clear talk about in the book was this notion of like, and I've heard this before. We teach it in our sales mindset course, but it's like you're behaving in accordance to who you are. Like, and just bring this in. You're a faith-based individual too, right?
I am.
Remember the
Yes.
whole "What would Jesus do" bracelet back in the day?
Yes, I remember that.
People had,
Yes.
because then they can ask themselves, is this something that Jesus would do? So then therefore
Hmm.
they behave according to that. But it's the same concept when it comes towards you. Am I, if I'm looking at myself, if I'm looking at Donald being a billionaire,
Yes.
then I need to ask myself, is this what billionaire Donald would be doing at this
Absolutely.
point?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead. I thought.
No, go. So same on the same on this line. Like, when it comes towards like the income potential. However, I also may not necessarily know those steps. I mean, and put yourself in a sales rep position now, where I got Mandy listening to the episode, and she's like, Ashley, I'm believing that. How do I do the action now to be able to make that happen? Like, what are some of those things that I could do to break past my limiting belief, that beyond just the mental barrier? I don't know if I'm making sense there.
No, you are.
You
You're
jump in.
yeah, you're getting into the how to, like how to do
Yeah,
it,
yeah,
right? Because we
yeah.
talk a lot about what, especially in the faith-based environments, like this is what you should be doing. This is like you said, what would Jesus do? But how do we do what Jesus did? How do
Yeah,
we, right? Walk on water. How do we turn water into wine? Like how are we operating in miracles? That's a different podcast. But what
that's
I'll
a different one.
say is I think it has a lot to do with your um it starts with the thinking. Okay.
Mhm.
I'm going to go back to that because you will naturally do some things differently if you transform your thinking. So that's where I'd like to start. How do I
Mm.
transform my thinking? Because, like you said, Donald, if I become the billionaire in my mind, I will begin to act in a way that's congruent with that belief. Because
Yeah, yeah.
right, I was talking about this before. I believe that our thoughts, the way we're designed, our thoughts drop down into our heart, and then out of our heart our lives are produced. We act out of
Mm.
what's in our heart. And so it's like an automatic process. So the first thing I would tell someone is get some new thoughts and train your thinking. It's like a garden that's
Mm.
been untamed. Like when you see a garden that's been untamed, there might be flowers in it or crops, whatever, but you're also going to see a whole bunch of weeds and a whole bunch of mess, right? Because it hasn't been
Yeah.
tended to. And that's where our minds are a lot of times because of what we're exposing ourselves to, whether it's in our lives or at work or at home or on social media. So our minds are so full of clutter and mess. So let's start with managing our minds, the thinking that we
Yeah.
already have, and beginning to pluck out the negative thoughts. How do we do that? You first have to be conscious that you're thinking negatively. So it's like, what am I thinking about?
Mhm.
What am I thinking about on a day-to-day basis? Am I thinking positively? Am I thinking negatively? And you have to begin
Yeah.
to stop the negative thinking, right? And say, oh my gosh, I really don't think I can get X amount of clients. I really don't believe that. See, that's where the
Yeah.
honesty comes in. And then you can say, you have to be willing to confront yourself. I talk about that in my book, Break Free, about, it takes so much courage, but you have to be honest with yourself and then say, okay, I don't want to think that way anymore. I need to replace that thought. But see, sometimes we get all these positive thinking books and all positive thinking, but you haven't dealt with the negative thinking. So it doesn't take
Yeah.
root, right? It's like trying to put a whole bunch of new seed on top of crappy soil and a whole bunch of other seeds, right? That didn't fully reach their potential. It's like, no, let's deal with the soil. Let's cultivate that soil. Let's remove what's dead in there and no longer producing. And now let's lay the foundation and start planting new seed, new thoughts. How do you get the new thoughts? Environment, who you're around, who you're listening to, great podcasts like the ones that you host and the ones that you produce, books, right? Conferences. You have to invest in yourself. Sometimes it's free, but sometimes it's not. Sometimes you have to pay for coaching. You have to pay for advising. You have to pay to be a part of certain communities. Like the wealthy understand this.
Mhm.
If you look at, even if you look at some of the top, I won't even say top earners, but if you look at some of the greatest people in their industries, they are paying people to correct them and help them with their thinking so that they can operate on a higher level. And they train with
Yes.
these people
Yeah.
every week, sometimes every day, sometimes for multiple
Yeah.
hours a day, just because they want to win. They want to be the
Yeah.
best. And so it just depends on how far you want to take it.
And as you were sharing this, there's a couple thoughts that came to mind. One of them was like, you tapped into something when you were talking about like your, just the belief again, and then how this it comes from our mind to our hearts, and everything from there go out. Right? You said it
Yes,
way more
yes.
eloquent than I could.
It
um,
look, it's Bible. I can't take credit. I can't take credit.
but the thought though with it was like, when I think about it from like a sales professional, if I have a thought that no one's going to answer the phone, then or prospecting doesn't work, I can't do any outreach. People are not going to
Yes.
want to accept my appointments. If I live in that belief, and that's $100,000 mindset, that's all I'm going to get, because the only people I get are people who come in as inbound and people who raise their hand. But if I have a negative belief about outbound, then I'm not going to get that. But if I change that belief and say, what would a successful business owner, a successful sales rep who's making $500,000 a year do? Well, they'll go for some of these larger accounts and they would actually reach out to them. They would be more confident on the call. They wouldn't give up as easy. Like there's all of these different little things because that belief comes into the heart then comes into action. And I would
Yes.
say, like you, when we started talking about how to, I think as a sales professional, I would challenge salespeople and say, you know what you should be doing, but you're
Mm.
probably not doing it because you're listening to the podcast, you're hearing this stuff, but you're automatically gonna. I know I automatically, when I listen to people, I'm being straight, I'm trying to be honest here, right?
Yeah,
I
please.
automatically in my head go back into that negative weeds. I need to rip out some of those negative weeds. I look at it and say, well, that won't work for me. I look for what's not going to work as opposed to what's going to work. That can't work in our industry. Ashley's talking about something in different types of sales, like that James is talking about it in that way, or my industry is a little bit different. You know what I mean? Because that
Yes.
right there is preventing me from even doing anything to test it out. So I love your idea of ripping out those negative weeds from the roots. And then we could go ahead and apply some of those things here. So as a sales rep listening to this, that's how you start.
Yes, because I mean, how can you learn what you already know? What do you feel that's already full? It's like when you're
Yeah.
talking to someone, yeah, it might be different, but
Yeah.
what's the 1%, 2%, 5% of information that you didn't have before the conversation that you needed to go that much further?
100%.
Right? So if you cut it off already, you don't even have the opportunity to learn that percentage that you needed to go the next step, to go, further.
Yeah.
It all goes back to knowledge. Like that's the difference between somebody who's earning a certain, well, it's not just knowledge, it's knowledge plus execution, right? You have to execute
Amen to that.
because
Yeah.
knowledge is, really potential. We say knowledge is power, but knowledge is really potential. It's not power unless you're acting on what you know. But that's the difference.
Amen.
It's like there's a knowledge gap. So,
Yeah.
Warren Buffett knows something that we don't know, right? So we need to read the book. We want to go in that
Yeah.
direction. It's like, okay, well, read what Warren's talking about and see what he was able to do. Doesn't mean you'll do it that way. I always believe you have to leave room for God and Holy Spirit to move through you and your gifts and your way of doing it. But the bottom line is there's knowledge there that you need that can help bridge the gap between where you are today. And like you said, Donald, I used Warren because you brought up the billionaire example, right? Between where you are today and that billionaire that you're becoming.
Yeah. No, I'm dead serious on that, man. I wrote it on. I have it in my when I record at home on my home studio, my home office. There, I have that the number. It's 10 billion that I have.
It's
Now I
yours.
may have limited. I may have limited belief on it, but I put 10 billion in 10 years.
Yeah,
So it's
I agree with you. I'm excited. Invite me to the celebration, the party when you hit the goal. I'm ready.
when we hit that, you'll come on the yacht off
Yeah,
Palm Beach here,
I'll
and
be
we'll
there.
go.
I'll be there. I will be there.
Uh, um, what are some other things that may limit me though? So we kind of get this idea now. You got us fired up here, and folks are getting ready to jump out and create these goals for this year. But what are some other things that might that might hinder me from tapping into my full potential? We talk about fear. We talk about um, the unfamiliar. Like, let's go into unfamiliarity with it.
Yes.
You talk about, and I imagine you talk about this being around people, that's coaches and so forth. But let's say, what about the people that are around me, my friends? Like, how
It's
can that impact my earning potential?
it's so funny. I love God because even before you said, I didn't know that's exactly where you were going, but when you're like, what are some other limitations? The first thing I thought was change your circle.
Mm,
You have to keep changing your circle. Like we read books about this, we hear about this all the time, but I can't emphasize this enough. You become like the people you spend the most time with. It's
mm,
true. It's true. So if you wouldn't want to trade your future for the people you're around, perhaps you need
yeah.
a different group of people around you. Because that's who you're around the most. That's who you're talking to. So they're either helping you come higher or they're helping you to stay where you are or potentially go lower. Right. So that's so important. I mean, I feel like I'm always talking about that with my clients about um, who they're around. Even, even if you're a high level leader, Like if you want to go
Yeah.
higher than where you already are, you have to put yourself around people who are doing better than you, which requires humility. Humility.
How,
Hmm.
it's I think sometimes it's again one of those things that's easier said than done. How do my I can't fire my family, like they're
True.
around me. Um,
Hmm.
how do I, you have great friends that you grew up with. Um, how do I ensure that I still maintain relationships, but find that new group of people? Do I just go on, Quora and go look for some group of folks, or
No,
how do I find that community? Thoughts,
I
feelings on that?
honestly think that we end up attracting them, okay, as we become the person we're called to be. Think about how I ended up on the podcast. It
Hmm.
was a fit, right?
Yeah.
Right? You beat people as you become who you're supposed to be. You're introduced to um, new people, new environments, and events, and things like that. And so I think a big part of it is not focusing so much on like, I've got to create this, new circle. I think you should focus on becoming the person that will attract the people that you want to be around. Right.
Mm,
So you can still attract, and it's like you might not be a billionaire, but what are some of those characteristics that
yeah.
billionaires have, right? As it relates to it, just the person, like I said, the character. The
Hmm.
character is important, right? Because your character is more than likely going to dictate your conversation. And people at a
Yeah.
certain level, when they hear your conversation, they'll either be turned off by it or attracted by it, right?
Hmm.
And they'll know, one of us, no, not one of us, or not one of us, but potential work
Yeah.
ethic. I don't know. They'll see something. You get what I mean? And you
I
begin
do.
to gain access. You'll get access. So that's one way. I also think it is good sometimes to network with people and step outside of your comfort zone and go to events. I'm kind of an extrovert introvert. I'm extroverted in my career, when I'm talking to people about what I'm doing, but there's another side of me where I'm like, leave me alone when I'm at home because I'm out, I'm pouring out
Chilling.
all day. Yeah, exactly. And so I have to be intentional about, well, maybe I should go to this. Maybe I should, go to this event, get out of my comfort zone, or go to that conference, or, whatever it is. I think you can meet people that way. And I think it's great to join like masterminds and communities like that where people are as hungry as you are and willing to put in the work. I believe in masterminds and communities like that. And then as it relates to the people, this is really hard, Donald, just being honest, that have always been in your life. you know, the truth is that if they're not growing at the same pace and level as you, there's going to be separation. I
Yeah.
think we want to avoid this part because it's painful, but that is a part of growth. Elevation does require separation, right? The
Yeah.
butterfly can't stay in the cocoon. There's a separation, a shedding, right, of its prior self in order to become its new form.
Yeah.
And so there will be some separation. And I think it's important to deal with your feelings around that and having conversations. It may not be that you never see these individuals again. It just might be the time that you spend with them is different,
Yeah.
right? And then you have to understand, and you're right, that is that feels like a loss. It's costing you, but success pretty much costs you or will everything. I'm a witness to
Mm.
that. Success,
Wow.
like your destiny, will cost you everything plus everything. So that may
Talk to me about
people.
that. I want to.
Oh my
I
goodness.
want you to tap into that. There's a story there, and I can't let this episode go without hearing that.
Oh my goodness. Yes. I think that in my case, in my journey, I was let's see, if I go back, I was, coming out of grad school, thought I knew exactly what I was going to do next. I was coaching women at the time, mentoring women, and I felt like this is the level that I'm called to. Like I'm just going to in my mind, Donald, I thought that was it. That was I had built a business, it was doing, well, and I had courses online and things like that, and I thought, okay, the next thing to do, I've been to school, I started my company, I'm doing well. duh, get married. That's what every woman is doing now, right? That's what I'm supposed to be doing. So, you know, I was so thirsty to be married. I got in this relationship, with this athlete. I'm like, oh my God, you're so focused on it. And it wasn't the relationship that God had for me, right? And
Mm.
what I mean by costing, I had to make a decision. Either I'm going to stay in this relationship and pretend like this is all there is to me and what I'm called to do, or I'm going to grow and choose my purpose. And that's really how my business and my ministry started. I called off my wedding and decided to pursue my purpose.
Wow.
And it cost me that relationship. It cost me maybe some of the opinions people had about me. It cost me the whole future I had planned. And I, had to mail all of my gifts back to family and friends and things. And in some ways, it felt like at the time my reputation, because, at the time it was like, you're this, brand new kind of entry level entrepreneur, and you hit the jackpot, this athlete, like, what are you doing? But I knew in my heart that that's not what I was supposed to be doing. And so that was the beginning of my entrepreneurial journey. It cost me that, right? It's cost me, having sometimes people are going to certain events or certain things and I couldn't go, things like that. It
Yeah.
costs a lot. There's so much more to my life in the story, but I would honestly say to anyone listening, I feel like every dimensional leap that you make towards your destiny will cost you something that you had on the last level. Because every point of increase requires us to change. And that's why, going back to your original question, you were asking, why are so many people living beneath their potential? It's because it's expensive. It's expensive to grow. You know what I mean? We always say ignorance is expensive. It is. Not knowing will cost you, but knowing will cost you too, and growing will cost you. It'll load you up on the opposite side, but it's going to cost you going up.
Yeah. It's going to cost something. I love this. I mean, so many things that I thank you for sharing that, first off, for being willing to do
Sure.
so. And I think we can probably go for like another hour on this conversation. I have a couple other podcasts that Ashley is coming on as guests, so I'm going to link to those in our show notes so you can get a chance to check them out as well. But Ashley, one of the things though, like I would ask you, was it worth it though, the cost that you had to pay?
Yes, and I tell everyone that all the time. I say, listen, it's not going to be easy. I'm being honest, it was so hard. Like every time I've had to level up, it has been so hard, but it's been so
Mm-hmm.
worth it. And then when I get on the other side, I realize why what I thought, just to encourage someone, what I thought I needed so bad, I realized why I couldn't go where I was going next. So you don't
Yeah.
see it there in that moment or when you're in process, but once you land and you're on solid ground in that next dimension, you realize, oh, that really wasn't a match for this location anyway. It wouldn't have
Mm-mm.
served me here. And it doesn't make them bad. It doesn't make that situation bad. It served you when you needed it, but
Yeah.
you don't need it anymore. And so, yes, I would say for sure it's worth it, because you gotta leave this earth knowing you exhausted your potential.
Yeah. Oh my. Listen, there's so much here. Actually, one takeaway in
Sure.
15 seconds. What's one major takeaway you want a salesperson listen to this episode to walk away as they plan financially to hit their potential in 2023?
Work on you, because you'll never out earn your self-worth. So you've got to believe that you're worth it first. And if you don't, work on that, because you can't make an ask that you can't back in your heart.
Amen to that. Ashley, thank you for coming on the show today. Thank you for your insights. Truly appreciate it. If folks want to get in touch with you, what's the best way for them to go about connecting with you?
Sure, you can find me on Instagram. That's the best way, at the Ashley Winston, or just connect with me on my website at theashleywinston.com.
Ashley, thank you again. Truly appreciate this.
Thanks for having me.
Listen, that was like straight like sales church. That was amazing. Ashley, thank you so much for coming on the show today. Thank you for your insights and for being here and helping us tap into our full potential. I would love to hear from you. What's one thing you took away from this episode? Go ahead and drop me a message on LinkedIn, Donald C. Kelly. Again, Donald C. Kelly on LinkedIn. I would love to hear what you took away from it, and to make sure that we are, we're just to see how you're applying it. If this is your first time listening to our show, subscribe, tell someone else about it. Take this link and share it with them. With that, also tell Ashley that you're grateful to be able to connect with her and that you got a chance to hear from her on the Sales Evangelist podcast. Speaking about that, we have some amazing sponsors and they're giving you some awesome offers. And I highly recommend you go and check it out. Take advantage of it. It's going to help you tremendously. As always, I share stuff like this because we want to help you to build better pipeline and we want you to convert more of that pipeline. When it's all said and done, I want you to raise your level of thinking and your potential and go out and do big things. Thanks so much for watching.